good evening to you and welcome to this program of Walter Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Deon Abrams, and on the program this evening I have with me my usual guest, Brother Tacuma Ogunseye and Brother Desmond Trotman. And we'll be talking about current issues in Guyana's political landscape. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you, Deon.
Thank you.
First of all, we must congratulate Brother Trotman on his
National award.
Yes. He's receiving a national award, a Medal of Service. Brother Trotty.
Well deserved.
Yes, but you know, one of the striking things about this ceremony.
Sister Thomas too also
yes.
receive an award.
Yeah, I mean, the cross section of people that received awards at that ceremony, and the fact that the president made mention that, and both the chancellor said that the awards are not, you know, a token. It's a recognition of service that people have given. And to see the people who went up to receive their awards, I mean, if you were there, then you understood, you know, the significance of recognition, of service, as the president would have said. And the fact that Jacques Dio, in his time, for umpteen years, denied this recognition to people, I think it was a great injustice. And even when President Granger began giving the awards, there was some level of condemnation. Right? But you felt the joy, the pride. I mean, big businessmen, you know, people who were involved in the media, all section in religion. I mean, the plethora of you know, it really was an eye-opener, and I think that it's something that must be commended. The government must be commended for it. And I could feel the pride and the joy of the people who received those awards. I mean, Ogun, you were there. What?
Yeah, yes, I fully support you. I think it's part of a national institution. You know, the PP, once the PP came to power, and particularly after the death of Dr. Jagan, you know, Jagdio, you know, and the PP leadership, you know, went on a conscious, you know, campaign to, you know, marginalize national institutions. And the national awards ceremony became a victim of the vendetta. But I think it is good that the present government has reintroduced it. And as you said, you know, very accurately, citizens who receive awards were very happy, and their family and their friends, you know, they clapped, and you see the sense of pride and thing, you know, that ordinary citizens feel at least the nation recognize their importance, you know. And I think it was a wonderful event, you know. The cultural shows also.
Yeah, they did. National dance.
Did a very excellent job, you know. And I think it definitely was a good event.
So, Trotty, yeah, I mean, you received an award. I ain't got none. What do you want to say?
Well, actually, like both Tacuma and you, I really believe that they, in reintroducing the awards, President Granger has actually moved to ensure that the past services of Guyanese will be recognized. And that he has made it clear, both the Chancellor and himself made it clear, that those awards will be continuous for as long as this coalition remains in office. And so that I think that is a very important kind of event. As you said, the spread was wide. One of the persons who was recognized for her work over the years in the area of disabilities is Mrs. Hyacinth Massey Thomas, who has been doing extremely powerful work over the years at the David Rose Center, David Rose Rehabilitation Center, and also in the area of physiotherapy over the years, you know. And so that when you look at the spread, you really felt that you know, the government has really moved to ensure that, you know, there's wide recognition. Speaking for myself, when I was notified that I was one of the persons selected for the awards, my initial thought was to refuse. But then I recognized that over the years, I was part of an organization, I've been part of an organization um, that which has been doing an extremely useful kind of work among the poor and the powerless in the community. I remember individuals, Guyana, Andai, Professor Thomas, Tacuma, you, a whole range of persons who over the years have been contributing. And I believe that the award really is recognition of not only the work that I did, but the work which people like yourselves have done over time and unfortunately have not been recognized. I also realized that there were persons outside of our stream who people don't know about who have been making contributions to our efforts. And for me, it represents a recognition, of their thing. I remember a very close friend of mine who I met for the first time about after 30-something years last year, a sister by the name of Rodney, who on 2 occasions that I know about actually did things which I believe contributed to my life being saved. And so that I felt that after careful thought, that all of these things was part of my thinking when it is that I said, yes, I'm going to accept the award. So for me, the award really represents, as I said, not only a contribution to, not only a recognition of the work that I've done, but also the recognition of the work that, people who have been close to us and remain close to us, who have been given service in their own way, people who have been on the fringe and have been supporting us. And yes, I thought that it was a good thing to accept the award.
Yeah. While you were outside, you mentioned a friend of yours who got an award and died. I think we should extend some condolence.
Oh yes, one of the awardees, Godfrey Proctor, who has worked in the IT section for years. He died, I think, this morning. Yes, and I find that the chance has been made that when you consider persons who were awarded in the past, and you take into consideration that a year has passed and a number of awardees have passed on, that I more and more understand why it is that those awards are important, because his recognition, his public recognition, only happened last week, and 1 week after he has passed away. Yeah, we want to extend sympathies to his grieving.
And I was pleased that the awards cut across the political divide. Yeah. It was so amazing. Yeah. And the fact is, everybody turned out. It was well supported by all. Given people. It tells us that people recognize the importance, and they felt appreciated for the recognition that they were given. All right, Adam Arias, Julia Johnson, even you talk about Pereira's for mining. Yeah. It was so amazing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And the other point that you made is extremely important, because during the time that the few occasions that the PPP made awards, they didn't spread it in the same way like this government has sought to ensure, that the widespread is represented in the awardees. And there's some people who've been awarded here for this year. I'm quite sure if it was that the PPP was in government and making these awards, that they wouldn't even have been considered. Yeah. They wouldn't have been considered. And so that I really want to compliment the awards committee, of which the president is the chairperson, to say a job well done. Thanks for a job well done.
Yeah, congrats to you also, and I hope that we continue the trend of awarding people, recognizing people's contribution. It adds so much to the ego of people and their feeling of wanting to do more. If you look at what has been happening with the people who are being brought back from the Hurricane Ravaged Islands. I mean, the input of the business community. All right, this is service. This is what you call service, right? And for those things, people need to be recognized, their contributions. All right, and if you don't recognize people, then their own goodwill towards you will not, come forth. And I think Jagdeo should be condemned in every way for the fact that for a number of years he simply put aside the fact that people needed to be recognized for their contributions to this country. And I mean, if we're to talk about Jagdeo, it's he really brought this country to its knees in many regards. And he continues, even as I was reading the Kaichor News, that he continues to spew a bundle of lies and to try to deceive the nation, just as he would have done when he was president. And even now that he's in the opposition, he continues to try to deceive the nation in every perceivable way. And I don't know why it is that our politics must be that we give credence to someone whose credibility is so, clouded. What is wrong with Guyanese people? And their sense of propriety, what is right, what is wrong, and just and unjust.
I don't know. I think it was an excellent editorial that Kaichor News carried.
Yes.
I think it was a guest editorial. I read it, and I think it was appropriate and well timed, because it really dealt with Jagdeo's pretense to be, and his lies and things. But I think the more important thing, the country, because of the racial divide, people like Jagdeo gets away with this kind of thing. The politics is still in the fundamentally a racial struggle, ethnic struggle. And, while I don't think he's fooling half of the country, because I think the African community, and by more extension, people who support the APMU, AFC coalition, represent by half of the country. I don't think they're being fooled by Jagdeo antics. In fact, people are in fact offended by his excesses. But I think that in the Indian community, the PAP historic constituency, he gets away with it because of ethnic solidarity. A lot of people don't necessarily believe everything that he says, even his own constituency, but they would not come out and oppose it because they feel at the end of the day, they got to keep the house united. So he's not fooling a lot of people. But that is Jagdeo method of politics. I don't think he could change. When he was president, there was a rumor in the diplomatic circles internationally, that people recognize him as a real pathetic liar.
Okay.
So he earned that reputation very early in his presidency, dealing with the international community. So I don't think the gentleman could change. I think we have to accept it as part of his character. Can't change,
Yeah, but while we recognize that, I think that there's a duty for both that we have, and that is to ensure that we keep focusing on his transgressions in the past, and prepare and let people know that in fact, if it is that he ever gets back to power, the situation is going to be worse. I think that recently I saw him saying, I saw something in which he was attempting to say that he's going to be preparing a dossier on the transgressions of the government, the way in which it is that the procurement processes have been violated. I think that what he's attempting to do is to negate the effectiveness of the dossier which was created by the joint opposition party, in which it is we identified the over 400 persons who were killed in the extrajudicial killings which he presided over, and so that he wanted to come up with something that would sort of counter that. One of the things that the dossier has. It has this photograph of this youngster who was burnt.
His genitals.
Yeah, genitals were burnt by the use of methylated spirits by those policemen who were stationed at Lenore. One of whom,
on fire.
yeah, one of whom was promoted, and so that what we have to do, because it is important for us to keep these things in focus, so that people could understand we were dealing with a beast, that we continue to deal with a beast who is going to be more bestial if it is that he ever gets back into power. And so we have got to, keep propagating what this situation is really about.
Yeah, but I mean, my difficulty, Brother Ogun said he cannot change. But how is it that you say one thing and the next week, because the evidence confronts you, you have to backpedal, and it's happening every week, and you're still continuing? I mean, what nature of man is that? I mean,
you see, there's a school of thought in politics that say even bad exposure is better than no exposure.
No exposure.
Yes, that's true. I think Jack News probably coming from that school. He wants to be in the news. And let
So
people
he
that
doesn't-
doesn't matter. If they cuss me out, they gain recognition for me. If they praise me, I get recognition. Win or lose, you gotta talk about me.
Right.
So I force you to keep me in the
news.
national consciousness.
Oh, wow.
It's a ruthless kind of politics, but there's a school that believe in it.
Yeah, but it's real, because we're dealing with the economy. We're dealing with the resources of the people. And even today, when we read that Queen's Atlantic has been given a lot more land than we could have even imagined. In the first instance, they said that they had, even before the ink was dry, they sold it out for a humongous sum of money, and now they're wanting to enter into a mortgage arrangement with a bank to get. All these lands belong to the government, belong to the state, not the government. All right? These are the people's assets that Jack Dio gave away. Right? And he's behaving now as though he was Mr. Clean, that he did nothing wrong. And every time he puts up an argument about an issue, then it comes into his face that this is what you have done.
You see, remember Hitler and his propaganda minister used to argue, if you keep telling a lie,
It becomes
over becomes
Yeah,
a
people
reality.
believe it
I think that's Jack the approach. We got 4 years, you keep telling the lie, And it is working to some extent. We got a few people that's biting into it, So it is working for him, not in a big way across our constituency, but in his own constituency, So Jack is not going to change. He can carry it right up to 2020. But until we start locking up and force in court and throw these things in front of you, or back you off, and then he can back off.
Yeah, that was the point I was just about to make. Because until you have the kind of exposure, and the kind of exposure that's going to be embarrassing to him is the exposure that will take place in a court of law. Because here it is that you're presenting evidence which you will find great difficulty to refute. The most recent thing about Atlantic Inc. is about land that was given to them during the PPP's tenure. This is not new lands that have been given to them.
I know.
This is lands that have been given them. You see, and as more and more as you delve, you come up with evidence which is appalling. Because every time you dig deeper and deeper, here it is that more of the rape of the resources by the PPP, comes to the
Confronts you,
fore. Yeah. And so that we have to, I said it a few weeks ago, and I'm saying it again, that the way to deal with Jagdeo is to put him before the court. Provide all of the evidence to the court, and let the court say that in the face of all of this damning evidence, that he's still entitled to immunity. Let the court say so, but provide the evidence. Put the evidence. Hold him up to public ridicule. You see, he's not being held up to public ridicule now because he believes that the way in which it is that the evidence is being presented is not impacting on him as it should, but it will impact on him if it is goes you go to court with the evidence, because it will not only be available for local consumption, but also for regional and international consumption.
And then it will be in the records.
And it will be in the records. And that is the way to deal with him. That is the way to deal. And you'll see how quickly he's going to retreat. If it is that you strip him of this thing of immunity that he says that he's close with, if you strip him of that, you're going to see how quickly he's going to come to heel. And so that we have an obligation to ensure that we bring him to heel. And the way that you bring him to heel is by putting him before the court and presenting all of the damning evidence that,
so what's preventing this move? Putting, all of those criminals before the court?
Well, I can't say with absolute certainty what is preventing it. But I do believe that whatever it is preventing it, that we should move quickly to get around those hurdles and to put those people. And it's not only Jack Dio.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's not only Jack Dio. And there's some other persons in civil society who have aided and abetted the criminal behavior. And they too should be put before the court. Some of them pontificating as if they're the paragons of virtue. And when you dig into their lifestyle, and when you dig into their behavior, you'll be surprised at the extent to which it is. They have lent their service to attempt to give legitimacy to the behavior of some of those money launderers and those people who have been involved in criminal behavior. And those people, all of them should be put before the court.
Well, I'm hoping that because people were clamoring for it immediately after the election.
After the elections, yeah.
And it seems as though they've given up hope that any kind of firm action will be taken against these people whom we pledged we would have dealt with in a judicious way. But so far, nothing has happened except for the arrest and release, and then I just...
And you see, because nothing has happened, they feel emboldened to take positions today as if it is that they have clean hands. I could point out a whole lot of them. Who've been involved in criminal behavior of one kind or another. Some of them have been helping to prop up the criminals and pontificate and attack the government today. And they're able to get away with it simply because you haven't charged them. You haven't taken the kind of actions, that will expose them to the world.
Now, one of the big things is that the GBTI has refused to honor a court order. And we wonder what is really happening in terms of enforcement of the laws of this country. Brother Trotman, you may have a clear idea of what is happening here, and how can this flouting of the law be allowed?
Well, as far as I know, Deon, Soku went to court and got a judgment, and got an order by an order of court that certain information must be provided by GBTI, and they have refused. And I understand that every effort by Soku to get the information have been met with defiance. To my mind, by refusing to adhere to the order of court, you are already in contempt of court. And Soku, therefore, must take whatever line of action it believes necessary to ensure that the information which it requires, will be given. I can't say here what is the line of action that I would like to see taken, but I would like to see a certain line of action taken. And I think that Soku must in their own deliberate judgment, determine how is it they're going to deal with the matter and deal with it. It cannot be allowed. This situation cannot be allowed to go on. Because again, the point that I've been making is that the same people who have been attacking the government are protecting, by their actions, protecting the criminals.
Yeah, Brother Ogun, this is another situation where you're talking about the money that belongs to the ordinary people, the rice farmers and so on. And the embezzlement of $500 million
Yeah.
you're talking about. And nobody knows where the money went. So you're trying to ascertain now what has happened to the people's money. And this bank that is supposed to have information that can help the relevant agency that is investigating the operatives of that institution that would have possibly embezzled the people's money. This bank is refusing an order of the court to provide information that will allow SOCU to determine where that money went, so that it can possibly recover the people's money, or, if necessary, institute legal action against those who are responsible. And this bank is refusing to provide the information that is necessary to have that process move forward. What is your take? I mean,
it is clear that there have to be collision between high officials at the bank and the criminals in the GRB board that siphon off probably a significant part of that money. You know, I can see a bank would want to expose itself the way in which the management of the bank is exposing the institution, if there's not something that they want to cover up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the only explanation. And I think as Suku dive into the evidence, it will reveal that there are senior personnel in that bank that participate consciously in ripping off the nation large chunks of that money. And that is what they're trying to cover up. But there's another dimension to this thing, you know. In Guyana, if a little man thief a mango, snatch a phone, the whole country come up in uproar, you know. And this is massive thieving, $500 million. And I think it's US dollars if I'm thinking. You know, when you convert that into Guyana dollars, 200 to 1. We're talking about significant money. I can't even count. I get the calculator for count. Yeah. And I'm concerned that there's not a massive public uproar for justice to be done. I mean, a little man thief a phone. Everybody want to come down for, you know.
Not everybody.
You know,
I mean,
you know,
it depends on the nature of the man.
You know,
you see,
it depends on the nature of the man.
You see, the point that Tacuma is making, it comes back to what underscores the point that I made. That because there's some people who write and speak on everything, but you know that they have said nothing on this matter. You simply, and the point that I've been making is that their silence on this matter has to do with the extent to which it is that some of them are complicit in the wrongdoing that has taken place. If the bank had nothing to fear, it would have provided the information. But one is only left to conclude that this bank in some way is involved, is involved in wrongdoings, and so prefers not to provide the information.
You know, and I want to join with Desmond in making this point that there are some regular commentators, and a particular one, I don't want to be calling names from the program, who write almost every day condemning the government, you know, who pretend to be this guardian of democracy and guardian of correct behavior. And that person, professional skills and his professional dealings automatically should make him want to address that matter. Because he's more qualified to deal with that matter than a lot of the matters which he tried to push himself into. And there's a dead silence. And we gotta call him out. He knows himself.
Definite silence. Definite silence.
And one have to ask why. Because if this is a me theater, the area of expertise, I discussing all kinds of things outside my expertise, and this particular area I'm totally silent. It would raise a lot of questions, you know.
Okay, well, we can only assume that every man has his own little clique, and he guards the members of that clique when the time does arise. You know, but one of the interesting things that came out about the plethora of comments that you get when people are involved in petty things like snatching a phone and so on. And there again, we go to the social media and you see a lot of racist comments. If a young black youth, if a black youth gets involved in any petty crime, they should die, this and that. I look at the issue with the 2 women who were killed at Albert Street, and the fact that you have a mix
multiracial
involvement. I mean, you hardly see.
No, our young people are in big crisis in the society, and that's, you know, the climate thing. It's a reflection.
Those black guys alone, then you would have seen the comments that would have come in that, and it's really telling something about our nation.
We're very selective,
you know?
man. Especially see the race politics affect society in all areas, you know. And you know, but the thing that worries me is that these young people who are in crime are the products of the PPP regime. They're what the PPP threw up on us. I mean,
most of them were born in the 23 years
of the PPP.
Most of them were born in 23 years.
You know?
Yeah, but they don't want to recognize that. You know, they don't want to recognize. I was looking at a video today that, you know, some folks went into a store and they crowded the one person who was there overseeing the operations, and they're packing shoplifters a whole set of stuff in the bag because it was about 10 of them and this one woman alone, right? But the fact is they were all of a particular ethnic group, right? And not a single comment was made on that video, and it got 8,000 something views, but not a single comment.
It's some things are acceptable when they're done by other people, by one set of people, and not acceptable when they're done by, you know, look, I got a difficulty with criminal behavior, but you know, you make it a very important point. The extent to which it is people condemn when a certain race group is involved, and the extent to which it is that they keep quiet when another race group is instructed, and so that we got to be concerned. But to me, there's a situation that I will probably go on for some time until when it is real recognition of the dangers of these kinds of actions. You know,
because criminality is criminality. It doesn't matter who, you know, does it. If it's to be condemned, then it's to be condemned. But you can't selectively choose to condemn and make all kinds of racist and disparaging remarks about one group, and then when people of your own kind commit the same acts, you are silent. All right? It's really, really disturbing, and it tells a lot about, you know, the way our people think, and that we need to really. We talk about social cohesion and all of that, but there's so much work to be done, and to get to that point where people can begin to act in any way that suggests we're moving towards a cohesive society. It's we're in a crisis. So, but the crime situation is one that is of concern. And the fact that you've mentioned that, and I saw a letter writer in newspaper saying that Guyana has 99.8% 98 point something% of mad people. His analysis was a bit off in terms of the generalizations he made. But one of the things the writer did mention is that, people are locked up for a joint or a little bit of petty things. And then the big criminals who are involved in these massive corruption scandals and so on are either put on bail, and then you hear nothing of the case, and so on. And these are the people who are condemned all the time. So how does our justice system reconcile these differences in terms of dealing with people when the law should be, equally distributed to all in terms of fairness and being just and all of these things?
You see, that is abstract law. In class society, law, justice, that price, And those who have money, could buy justice, and those who don't, and the poor and the powerless, they face the blunt of the legal system and so, but people with money and power, they buy themselves out of trouble. But I think our crime situation have more than many dimensions. Okay, I will still argue that the majority of young people, and I'm making on top of young people who in the petty crime and so, I think that is driven basically by economic and social deprivation. Then we have the drug element, crime which is being propelled by the drug activity, and they got its own logic. I mean, if you get involved and the boss man say, pay for right you off and get right off. It ain't got nothing to do with whether you're rich or you're poor. And then I think we have to accept in the society that with the widespread use of marijuana and cocaine and other drugs and the undernourishment of the population, I think it is telling on people, and I think a lot of people are mentally affected by that mix, and some of the crimes are driven by that too. So it seems to me that we have a whole it's a complex mix, but at the end of the day, given the size of the society and given the pervasiveness of the crime discussion in the media, the media strives very, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, a crime sell papers, so, and given that, pervasive thing, it is becoming a real problem that as a nation we have to address it. I think this is one of the issues that is bigger than government. I don't think government alone could find the answer. Though government has to, take the lead in many respects, but I think that the society have to begin to see this as a wider, matter that requires the energies of every sector of society.
But Tacuma, while it is that I heard you make the point about the use of marijuana contributing to crime. I don't know to what extent that is so, because we also have to consider, when we do that, we also have to consider the use of alcohol,
yes,
as a deterrent, as a influential factor in terms of crime. But I do believe that if it is that we're talking about moving to address very seriously the whole question of crime in the society, I agree with Tacuma. It's not a matter that could really be done by the government by itself. But the government must take a lead. The government must recognize that part of the problem is the corrupt police force. The fact that we have, from the highest level of the police force down to the bottom, we have some very corrupt persons holding influential positions. And unless you begin by weeding out those corrupt persons out of the police force and ensure that you have place persons who are more equipped to function in keeping with the oath that they've taken. We cannot begin to address the serious problem of the escalating crime situation simply because some of the escalating crime has to do with the fact that the corrupt policemen in charge of certain areas of policing are themselves aiding and abetting the situation. So that I do believe that you have to really begin, the government needs to begin by looking in that area. I anticipate very shortly a struggle in the government in relation to straightening the police force, because I hear a preference for some individuals being expressed by the Minister of Justice. Now, those persons,
The Minister of
Public security.
Public Security, yeah, and those persons whom he has been expressing confidence in are the persons in the police force who the public has very little confidence in, or no confidence at all. So if it is that you want to retain those persons, how do you propose to impact the escalating crime situation when the same persons who the public has no confidence in are in charge of the system? And so that we have to be able to recognize where we have to start and begin from there, if it is that we're really serious about dealing with the crime situation.
Yeah, but then you have the other dimension where you have, just as you have the big drug lords and so on, you have the people who are giving these youngsters guns and so on to go and get involved in these crimes, and you're not getting these people, who are bringing these guns into the country and allowing our youngsters to use them to kill and to maim and do all kinds of...
You're not thinking, because there's evidence that there's a linkage between the importers of arms and high officials in the government. There's a linkage there. So if it is that you want to really get to deal with the situation, you got to be able to address the problem. This thing is not about holding it's not only about holding the person who has the weapon in his hand, but also holding the person who's facilitating the exercise. And there seems to be no willingness to go in that direction, particularly when it is that you realize, look, for me, one of the biggest scandals that point to the inefficiency within the police force is the inquiry that was held recently into the allegation of the attempt to assassinate the president. Because some of those persons, the behavior of some of those persons that came under the microscope tells me that they really shouldn't be in any high position in the force. They should be gotten rid of. And you have to think, because you have a proliferation of weapons in the society today. A proliferation of weapons, and we're not concerned with getting to the source of the weapons. Our primary concern, as far as I can see, is to get a person who has a weapon in his hand, and you believe that you're addressing it. You're not addressing it because the source that the young criminals could relate to is still present and active. And you have to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, it's a real fascinating thing, all these. I mean, and you're talking about children who are just out of their, in their teens and just out of their, like you said, they're all part of the Jagdeo PPP 23 years of maladministration.
But you see, when you look at the logic behind some of these violent crimes and murders, you know, when I was much younger, you know, everybody, the boys at the corner who may be engaged in criminal activity, knew that the last thing you do or you want to happen in a robbery is to commit murder. Because once you commit murder, the police are hauling off, you know, and smart, you know, thief men knew that that's the last thing you do. But we got a set of young people who seems not to have even a value for their own life. So they're not, in a way, they're not the classical criminal. Okay. I can't find a better distinction because a lot of their behavior is not really consistent with, you know, serious criminality. It is consistent with a set of young people who seems to have been, you know, losing some sense of themselves and their mind. You know, the problem is more like in the psychological realm, right, more than the criminal realm.
Yeah, because.
What you gotta understand that a lot of those a lot of those youngsters who are in criminal activity are also exposed to certain other influences that those persons who we talk about, those criminals of yesteryear, didn't have. I mean, you have the television thing, yeah. All of the violence that you see taking place are copied from what is in the scene and the.
Because I mean, before they go to rob you, before they take your stuff, they shoot you and then they take it.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, and some of them already get what you have, and then they turn around and tell shots and it's. I don't understand.
You know, I mean, in real criminal behavior, you know, is work backwards. Look, because I grew up in the market. Market, you know, you got all kinds of people. You pick up things, you know. But when a drug, if a druggie pick up your thing, and you see and you go to he doesn't resist.
Okay.
The ordinary criminal, you pick up a thing, you catch it, you want to fight, you want, you know, and thing. The drug, he don't resist. You know, it's a different kind of thing. You know, it's a different kind of thing, and I'm thinking a lot of we young people, you know, it's a combination. Not only is we see marijuana smoking or rum drinking. If you eat them properly, you could tolerate it more. But I think we have to recognize that a lot of these young people are undernourished. So when they take a little of these things, it have a stronger effect than normal on them. You know, and the sense of being a rational behavior in there. Because let me tell you something, how thief men use to operate. Every thief man knows the easiest thing is to go and commit the crime. The hardest thing is to avoid detection from the police. Police, for 95% of the crime, police on the scene. Police work is learn how to find you after the act. And good thief men is operate from back forward. The young people who just operate from some, I know, huh? They just concerned with the I could shoot the man and think you'll get away with it. You want to stab a man in public, you're going to go at a night spot with the cameras and you're going to stick up a man and shoot you and think you're going to get away with it. I mean, you know, something.
Something is wrong with it.
Something is wrong with your head.
But anyway,
I don't know.
People have become more daring, man. People have become more daring.
I don't know what to say, man. This thing,
desperation.
The psychologists forget me for these matters.
Okay. Anyway, but it's even though we're laughing, it's a serious matter.
Serious, yeah.
Because I mean, people are losing their lives, and the craziness is so pervasive. Look at the youngster that they lash in the head, bury Bunny in a
chop
pit.
him up into pieces.
And
it's madness. I mean,
It's I don't know.
I don't know, man.
But how people could believe they could get away with that? You know what I mean?
But you see, there's another aspect of criminal behavior.
This would be the last point,
Our
because-
people's response to criminal behavior, which is extremely worrying. And I want to use the example of that lady who was that policewoman who was murdered, chopped the arm thing. I mean, I found, and Tacuma and I had to make some interventions recently in the thinking of thing. The way in which some men responded to that act, the willingness to throw the blame on the woman is extremely worrying. Because it seems to me, you see, it's that kind of behavior actually lends itself to
legitimizing.
yes. So not a lot of thought. The willingness to come out in condemnation of the woman for some apparent misbehavior. I found it to be frightening, you know, and to excuse the man's the viciousness of the man's attack on the woman. And I think that for as long as that kind of thing it continues to prevail, you're going to find more and more, you know.
All right, we got to shut shop here
violence taking
because
place,
another program is on stream, supposed to be on stream. But I want to thank you all for being here on the program, and we look forward to being with you next week, same time, same channel, for another program of Walter Rodney Groundings. Do have a good night. Bless you all.